Hello and welcome to Academic Transfer in Focus. My name is Galen Scott and I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Transfer Programs. As you know, all of our work here at ACC comes under the umbrella of student success. Our strategic plan talks about student access, student persistence, and student completion. Our guided pathways work in the last few years has been about those same three things: access, persistence, and completion. Particularly, the notion of guided pathways is that we are giving students a little more help and a little more direction so that they can achieve their goals, whether it's a certificate or a degree or transfer or transition to employment. One of the key aspects of this work is engagement and connections. So today we're going to talk about faculty advising and how that is supporting our guided pathways work. We have with us today the two folks who are leading the implementation of our faculty advising initiative. We have Estrella Barrera, who is the Department Chair for Occupational Therapy Assistant, or OTA for short. And we have Grant Potts, who's the Department Chair for Philosophy, Religion, and Humanities, or PRH for short. They are co-chairing the Faculty Advising Implementation Work Group. So they're here to talk a little bit about what they've done in this last year, and we're very glad that they're here today. So let's start just with how this new faculty advising system will support the ideas embedded in guided pathways. I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, I think I'll start the conversation by offering just a little bit of a perspective from my role as a department chair and as a faculty person at ACC. Having had the opportunity to be part of Futures Institute really allowed me to look at the college as a whole and not just in a workforce program. And it opened up my eyes to the needs that students really have across the college. I think in a workforce program sometimes we're a little more tunneled because our students come in very focused and degree plan is set out. So the Futures Institute started kind of that spark for me, and then had an opportunity to also work with Grant in the Futures Institute. So when we had the opportunity to be asked to facilitate the implementation of faculty advising, it was like, yeah, this is going to be a pretty good idea, because I know what the Guided Pathway Initiative is all about, and this to me seemed like, of course, this is something that we should be doing to further support the student.
Okay. Grant, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. I think that part of my enthusiasm for faculty advising came out of that experience in the Futures Institute, and the expansion of my sense of what's going on with our students outside the classroom. From past work experience, I had a little bit of a sense of that, but just working with other people and talking about a student's path through ACC, I think one thing that struck me was that as a faculty member, even though kind of theoretically I knew that was out there for students, I wasn't engaging with my students on those other issues unless the students brought them to me. And often it was to just kind of reflect at that moment about what's going on in the institution that could help them. And one thing that struck me early when we did one of our site visits was talking to a faculty member who was a faculty advisor. This was in Miami, where they have call them faculty mentors, but they have a faculty advising system. And her discussing how integral she felt like that was to the success of their Guided Pathways initiative, partly because it did get faculty involved with students in a different way outside the classroom, and in a more formalized way than just the informal advising that might happen if they come during your office hours. But also, part of what she talked to me about, and has been a kind of continuing echo in my mind through all this, is the importance of bringing together the instructional culture and the advising culture at an institution so that the two can work together to support the students. So for me, that's a central part of this as part of Guided Pathways. We often talk about it not just as guided pathways, but guiding pathways. I know Matthew uses that language all that time, and I think that's what we're talking about here, is being involved in that advising culture as a way by which not only do we lay a pathway out for students, but we help help them navigate it.
So what are the key
Yeah.
elements of faculty advising? Is it about degree audits and helping them figure out their next semester's courses? Or
That's a loaded question.
Uh-huh.
I think, as we embarked in this project in the fall of last year, we very quickly connected with, this is a partnership between student services and faculty. And faculty advising should be and needs to be driven by faculty. And so, part of the work that we did in the fall was just really getting comfortable with, what are those roles? What are the distinctions between, what student services does, and then what our roles as advisors are going to be. Has been really a fun opportunity to look at what the rule is. What was it designed for? What are the important elements of the rule? And then what are some of the interpretations about the rule? And in visiting with key stakeholders around the college, it really allowed us a good perspective, or to hear their perspective and what their interpretations of the rule were, and what kind of faculty advising was currently occurring across the college at varying levels, how they saw it to be similar with student services or not similar to student services, who's doing what. So I believe that the fall semester, now into the spring semester, it's really allowed us an opportunity to kind of delineate that, so that as faculty advisors, we're not just, we're not duplicating what student services is doing, but as Grant has said, we really are guiding the student within the discipline of study now.
Yeah.
so it sounds like it's more about the connections that you're making, right? Around love of discipline or career opportunities or those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think there is a temptation to try to pin it down. Like, what is the faculty, like, what is their job in this? And I've tried to resist that as we've navigated through this, because increasingly, I think part of what the value of having faculty in that advising culture is that faculty are professionals who come from a background where they tend to operate with a great deal of autonomy already. That can be frustrating for people sometimes, but that also is one of the strengths of faculty, is that they have that flexibility to kind of figure out what's going to serve students in any particular situation. Of course, a big part of faculty advising is meeting with students, talking about the program of study that you're responsible for, and helping students navigate that. But I also think it's about just creating that relationship with the student, making sure they have that mentoring relationship with the faculty, but also creating relationships with student services and creation relationships with the program you're a part of, and being that conduit through all the, the student services, the larger institutions of transfer, potential employers in the workforce and the program, and helping not just advise the student, but advise all of those on how to work better to serve the student. So for me, faculty advising, that advising piece, it's centered on the student, but it goes well beyond the student.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you've spent the last year leading this implementation work group. Tell us a little bit about the approach that you took. What did you do to lay the foundations for this initiative?
Well, I think what we first started with was really Grant and I going through, and the fact that Grant was part of the group writing the rule a year or so ago, right? Really offered even a greater perspective for us to kind of start some of our groundwork. But we quickly realized we have to have a working group, and through your support, we formulated a group that covered across the campus. Student service representatives, we had department chair representative, data analytics representative, so that we had key stakeholders that could really kind of guide us and give us perspectives. And then once we launched our working group, and then we thought, okay, well, now we got to go out into the college and meet key stakeholders. And that was what we spent the fall semester, was, again, just listening to the different divisions, the deans and then the department chairs, and what do you think? What's working? What are you currently doing? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? And it was really a semester of listening.
Exactly. And I think we began with the rule because that's kind of, I don't know, that's the architecture underneath what we're doing, and a lot of thought went into that. And I actually think, I just want to say that it's a well-written rule. And it's a well-written rule because it has ambiguities, but it also has a clarity, especially about goals. And so we were often going back to that and saying, what is this about? What is the, and working through that with the work group, talking to them about what this should look like, and then really exploring and seeing what other people thought. And we talked to them, and what we tried to do was more clarify what the rule actually said, but more, again, just trying to hear what the different divisions thought about faculty advising. And one thing that emerged, I think, for me was how much there were aspects to faculty advising we never imagined when we were working on the rule.
Yeah.
And part of why I thought it was a good rule as we went through is because the rule had the flexibility to absorb that.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of what we learned was that what is going to work and what's going to serve students is going to be very different from division to division to division. And so a lot of what we spent a lot of time thinking about is how do we create some sort of consistency, because if we're partnering with student services and they suddenly have 10 different systems of advising to deal with on top of what they're doing, that's going to drive them crazy and isn't going to necessarily make for a strong system. But we also still want to preserve the ability of divisions to really make this work for them. So we talked a lot about what are the core pieces that would make advising work consistently, and then where we wanted to kind of support divisions in figuring things out. And so what we focused on was just kind of formulating what this looks like.
Kind of from a systematic standpoint, we quickly realized, or toward the latter part of the fall semesters, that we really want to be thinking about this systematically, right? That we want to implement a systemic change, cultural change, and be very thoughtful and intentional about that. And I know that our work has been like that. Is looking, okay, we're doing this now, but what is it going to really look like? And is it feasible? Is it sustainable? So those kinds of conversations have really been present in the working group, in our discussions with you as well, that this is not an easy task. And we recognize that to sustain it, it has to be strategic.
Right.
And those parts kind of have been coming into play, into what is our plan for the next 3 years. And you know, this semester, spring semester, was really now about, okay, what is the training that the faculty advisors are going to need, right? You know, our jobs were to gather some best practice resources, but ultimately we're going to present it to the faculty. What do you guys think, right? This is what we've come up with, but it's really us to decide, is this the tools that you need? Yes, we are definitely relying on student services and the transitions that they've been going through, and there are trainings, like, what do you guys have? What can we use? And they've been extremely supportive. Kathy James is like, whatever you guys need that we have, you can use, and we can tailor and we can modify, etc. So we're not reinventing the wheel. So that's been a really nice partnership that's emerged
definitely.
even in our work.
Yeah, our experience working with student services, so a lot of this was also just working with student services, has been extremely encouraging about how positive this partnership can be, because they have the experience of that face-to-face advising, that direct advising with students. They have the systems in place. They've been doing this for years. And you know, a lot of instructional units are advising on a formal and informal level as well. And so part of what, when we were talking about being systematic, it was also getting a system in place that works with the ecology of services that are already there. You know, there's a lot of ways different people are supporting students at ACC, and they're doing it well. And this works in as much as it helps bring all those together to wrap around the student even better and support those students
Absolutely.
even better. Yeah.
So how do you see this rolling out in the fall? I know you talked about a 3-year plan. What do you see coming in 2018, 2019?
That's a nice question, because it has evolved over the past couple of semesters, just really looking at the realities of it, you know, and the numbers of it, and we realize there's cost to this. We know can't pretend that this is not going to be a costly venture, but it's one that if we're committed to student success, then all right, how do we roll this out and sustain it? So at this point, we're looking at let's see, first time at ACC with less than 12 hours.
Yeah, really being the
is-
first students we try to reach to and bring on board.
And then using the fall semester as a rolling in of faculty advisors, going through the selection process for the divisions to go through the selection process for faculty advisors, and then starting with the orientation. And then we're also going to be creating ongoing training modules that we're developing this semester and into the summer. And so that's kind of the
Yeah.
thoughts that we've had around the rollout for the fall.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the fall, in addition to orienting and training faculty, we're going to be needing to do work with the divisions and with the departments to help orient them on how to think about how faculty advising works in their particular instructional units. So, yeah, I think there's still a level of building that will happen in the fall with an idea that by the spring we should be able to start really placing students with faculty advisors and having them start the work.
Okay. You mentioned resources. It is a resource intensive sort of initiative, release time and stipends and the creation of instructional associate positions, if
Right.
that's what a discipline decides to do. You know, those are decisions that are made at the cabinet level about how to support this and how much resources will be available. So where do you see this in 2 or 3 years? How would you define success for this faculty advising initiative?
Well, I mean, I think on the minimal level, if we're reaching students and helping them persist and complete, that kind of baseline is our baseline of success, is persistence and completion. But it really does need to be implemented at a substantial level for us to begin to see that. And it's going to take time before we even begin to see those kinds of numbers, because a lot of faculty advising may happen more late game in some disciplines in terms of the student's trajectory through. Although one of the things we learned in our discussions with people was that most divisions actually want to connect with their students right off the bat. Like, they're not wanting to wait till the end, but they want to help their students out right away. But yeah, I would love to see us have full implementation in 3 years. I think that would be a clear sign that we're going in the right direction. That's big, and I know that takes a great deal of resources. But I don't think we're going to get quite the benefit we would get from faculty advising if we don't just pull the Band-Aid off and do it college-wide as quickly as we can. And I know there's realities to just, it's expensive, and it's not just financial expenses. There's a certain level of just our strategic creativity gets absorbed into an initiative like this in a college where we have a lot of other initiatives going on, and we have to make choices about where we put our resources. But I think this works because it becomes infused into the culture of every student.
Yeah, and I really envision and I get excited that in the near future, that a student comes to ACC and they immediately know who their student service advisor is and who their faculty advisor is, and that's the culture of ACC.
Right, exactly.
That's pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, because that's what we want, is students to have this be such an integral part of ACC. They don't even know that there was a time where they weren't assigned a faculty advisor and a student service advisor. That's just how they know things to be done.
Okay. My thanks to you both. You're doing great work, and I appreciate y'all being here to talk about what you're doing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That tells you a little bit about the good and hard work that's going on here at ACC. This is just one piece of a much larger set of goals, all aimed at supporting our students. You've got some information on the screen. You can contact these department chairs who have taken this on and have done such good work in laying the foundation. There are links to the administrative rule if you want to see exactly what they're talking about. We hope that you understand the value of this work, and we're happy to answer questions and engage you in this work if you want to help do what we're trying to do. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.